Welcome. This is Tia from Whatwouldteosay. Thank you for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated. It is episode 12, camera purchases, gear review. So let's get straight into it. So this particular video is I'm kind of reviewing the history of my photography career, specifically the camera, because I had someone a while back in one of my videos ask me, how do you go about choosing a camera and things of that nature. So I was thinking about how I wanted to approach that topic because it's such a wide range topic. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? Let me do kind of like a practical guide on how I want to do this because that makes the most sense. And then you can kind of figure it out from there, right? So, so, um, going back, I started with film, you know, and it was a point and shoot, but all I remember it was a Minolta point and shoot camera. I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact model or anything of that nature. But the Minolta brand, keep in mind, is important to this review because I primarily shoot Sony gear. No, I'm not a Sony fanboy or anything of that nature. I respect the brand. I grew up with the Sony brand. I had a Sony Walkman. I had so many Sony products. And I felt like Sony was the type of company that made things for the common everyday person. So I stuck with them. So that's part of my brand loyalty. Now, don't get me wrong. I still do my research and look at other cameras and things of that nature and see if it works with me or not. Okay, so let's clear that. Let's put that in a nice little box because I know how this camera world, the camera mafia world works. Oh, they he shoots Sony, he shoots Canon, he shoots Nikon. Cut it. We ain't dealing with that. All right, so let's go on to the next stuff. So we're gonna fast forward the time. We're gonna talk about digital cameras specifically because that's pretty much what everyone has. So let's clear this another point. This is not a gear review, so I'm not going to be discussing newer cameras per se, but like I said, there's more of a practical guide on the cameras that I've used, which set the tone on what I needed and how I use the camera. Also, I believe this would help beginners and others to set the tone for themselves as far as, how they want to go about purchasing a camera or identifying their needs for their camera. All right. So I categorize cameras as the following. One, point and shoot. They generally small, pocketable. They have zoom lenses. Basically, with zoom lens, you have different focal points. So it could go wide and it could go, telephoto lenses. So you could actually shoot further out. I call these mid-grade point and shoots. They generally have larger lens. Same thing, wide angles and telephoto lens. You could generally do a little bit more. It's a little bit you could definitely go manual with it. So it's pretty cool. And then the final, I just kind of just grouped them all together to some extent. It's the pro camera, detachable lenses. Options are huge. You're figuratively going down the rabbit hole with this particular type of camera because you can do the microphone system, lighting. I mean, the list goes on when you go into pro camera, and it's manual for the most part. But today and age, everything is computers. Everything is smart technology. So you can get a pro camera and still be able to shoot some good quality pictures. But we're not. That's as far as we're gonna go with that. So, with that being said, one of the first cameras that I purchased for myself, which was a point and shoot, was the Kodak Easyshare V530, which is a small little camera. It's like what I told you. It's 36 to 108 millimeters, 5 megapixels. I literally threw this in my pocket and I just literally shot everything with this, learning the ins and outs. Like I had some compositional skills. I knew the ins and outs of a camera because my father was a videographer and my uncle was a photographer. So I learned under their umbrella. So I had a pretty good idea. It was the digital part that was a little different. I had to kind of figure out and go through. What I enjoyed about this, like I said, small, you could put it in your pocket, you could travel with this. This is what I truly, truly enjoyed about this. You know, so it's perfect for little trips with the family and things of that nature, right? So the next one, it was the mid-grade point and shoot. So I had, when my children were born, I purchased the Kodak Easyshare Z612, which was a 6 megapixel camera, putting up photo now, and then my brother gifted me this Kodak Easyshare P712, which was a 7 megapixel. Generally tend to be a little, like I told you, larger lens. It protrudes in and out. Has a little grip in it, you know, and this is still considered a travel camera too. So, you know, it simply nowadays it comes to just particular style, you know, and built. So this was what I was working with. And then before I jump into that, the higher end grade stuff, or I would call hybrid, it wasn't quite, I didn't quite get a pro camera right away. My reasoning was I felt like there was too many options. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was, like I said, I was looking at all different cameras. I was looking at the Canon Rebel. I was looking at Nikon. At the time, I knew Sony had cameras, but I didn't realize like they were kind of moving between the A mount system and the E mount system, which we'll get into shortly. So with that being said, my brother, he always supported my photography, and he gifted me the Sony Nex-5, which I still shoot to this day. You know, this is a 14 megapixel. I do shoot. It's adaptable Minolta lens. I shoot manual focus with this particular camera, and I can also attach a mic to it. And I do primarily black and white work with this camera. For some reason, it just feels right to me with this camera. Take a quick little look at it. This is my baby. So my brother gifted this to me, and he gifted it to me because he bought it for himself. Excuse me. And he realized, oh, when he originally gave it to me, it had a adaptive manual focus, but I think it was called Zenit, if I remember correctly, which is a Russian manufacturer, and he could not use it. He wasn't familiar, so he said, "You know what? You take the camera. I'm pretty sure you'll figure it out." And I eventually figured out. I mean, it was a little learning curve, learning how to use manual focus, but I did manage to figure it out, right? So I shot with that camera for a few years. Now, mind you, through these time periods, I was just shooting one for me. I was shooting family and friends. And you know what? A lot of people didn't know I did photography. You know, that came as a shock later on when I just kind of came to the scene and say, yep, I take photos for hire. I am a I consider myself a pro photographer. So that's how I got into the game, right? So I was born in darkness, as Bane would say in Batman. So that was me. I honed my skills using regular, basic, everyday cameras. I wasn't using a pro camera, but I understood the composition. I understood using the camera manually. I understood those essentials. So by the time I bought a pro camera, I was efficient with it. The learning curve was very, very, very small, right? So with that, I started the hunt, the journey to looking for a pro camera. Excuse me, what I thought was a pro camera at the time. So I bought the Sony A100. So the weird thing about this, I never really got the chance to shoot it because when I bought it, the memory card slot, the pins were bent, so I couldn't use it. Luckily, the seller was pretty cool with me, refunded me a part of my money and let me keep the camera and the rest of the stuff that came with it, which was essentially the lens. But I just held on to it. So these are what you call a DSLR, basically. This is before we go into the mirrorless system. This is mirrorless. So it's kind of interesting what Sony was doing. Just a little quick history. I told you earlier, remember the Minolta name. The reason why I told you to remember it, because Sony purchased Minolta, and this was the first camera that was developed under the Sony name after purchasing Minolta. Very important point to understand, okay? So this was the A mount. The Minolta film cameras were the cameras in the 80s, the film cameras, the advanced cameras, used the A mount, which is the lens mount for this. I'll get into film cameras. We'll be doing a part 2 shortly. I definitely promise, because you can't do a digital camera practical guide without doing the film. You just can't do it. So didn't work, but it got me started. And then, I eventually would end up buying the Sony A77, which is interesting. The reason why I bought it, because my brother-in-law found a hand grip, a battery grip. And I looked at and he was like, I know it's for a camera, but I don't know what camera, but I'm a gift it to you. Take it. So I looked up the model and I noticed, it's for the A77. I pulled up the A77 and I fell in love with it. I literally fell in love with the camera. I'm like, that's going to be the camera I purchased. Now, I didn't purchase the camera right away. It was expensive for me at the time, and I was like, I gotta wait. I waited and waited, and the opportunity came literally. So I got the battery grip, and literally I bought that camera like 2 years later, give or take. No, it may have been more, almost 4 or 5 years later, right? So I bought the camera. I started shooting professionally with it. And I never looked back. This is when I started into the pro camera stuff. And I noticed, obviously, with pro cameras, they generally tend to be big, especially the DSLR. So I made a decision. I was shooting street photography with the Sony A77. This technically monster of a camera, and I'm like, I'm pretty bold individual, but I like to keep the scene just the way it is. I don't want to ruin the scene because they see me with this big camera. They know I'm taking the picture, right? So what I ended up doing was getting the Sony Nex-5, which is a 24 megapixel camera, which is a camera I still shoot with to this day. I'll put a picture up. I don't have it with me at the moment, but that is my daily street photography camera. I go out on the streets with it. It's relatively small. I do adaptable manual focus lens so I can control the focus. The reason why I use manual focus is all about speed for me. You know, I love auto focusing, but at the end of the day, I'm the autofocus. I'm the one creating the photo, and I want full manual control of everything that I'm doing. That is why I do adaptable manual focus. So getting that out the way. The Sony A77, I forgot to mention, was a 24 megapixel camera. The Sony A100 was a 10 megapixel camera. And then the latest camera that I have, which I'm recording on now and I use for professional work, is the Sony A99 8 mount system, which is a 24 megapixel camera. Love the thing, full frame. I can still use my old lens, so I save money doing that, which was kind of the reason why I upgraded to it. Eventually I will move into the newer Sony systems, the E-mount system, full frame cameras. I'm in no rush to do that. You know, I like to take my time and review everything and make sure it's for me. That's what it comes down to. So the points that you want to consider with camera purchases is what you're using it for. What's your budget? Those are the two main things, you know. Now, if you have an open budget and you can do what you like, I do recommend getting the best that you can get, you know. But I also recommend that you also take the time to learn the camera that you want to purchase, read some reviews, get objective reviews, not subjective, where, you know, you may have, no shade, you may have a Nikon or a Canon guy doing a review on a Sony or vice versa. It's going to be a little subjective because they have their brand that they deal with, and that's just the nature of the game. So, you know, definitely do find reviews on people who use the camera and they use it daily, and they use it for the photography that they say they do. That's important as well. Other than that, you know, that for me, that's how I choose my camera. So it's two cameras for me basically. One is for street photography, and one is basically for everything else: portrait work, commercial work. The list goes on. That's how I determine my cameras. I have multiple cameras because I shoot multiple things, and it also saves the wear and tear on the cameras as well, instead of just using one camera and just shooting everything with that, because eventually you're gonna have to replace it. The clicks on a camera is equivalent to mileage on a car. The higher that mileage goes, sooner or later you're gonna have to replace that camera. So to save, that is why I have multiple cameras. It's not a money thing or anything of that nature. This is something that I do. It's something I make money off. And so with that being the case, you know, I make sure I try to get the bang for my bucks, basically. I hope this gear review, you know, practical guide has helped set the tone on what you want to do, set the tone for a beginner that wants to get in the game, and set the tone for those that are already in the game but don't have that mentorship or that person to kind of guide them in the right direction, or they just don't have anyone to have that conversation with. I hope it helps you. You know, this is 20 years fitted into this video. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to all my social media, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe here, YouTube. Hit that notification button. And I will be returning with something else, doing better and bigger things. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, peace.